All right, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It is now 5:30, and it's time to start our joint city council and planning and zoning meeting. Need to call the order for council. We're here. Yes. Some of us, all of us.
One way or another.
One way.
All right. Planning commissioner,
Yes, good evening.
need to call the order for.
Yes, call to order for the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have one absence, it looks like. Mr. Moss, do we need to do an official roll call?
No, we don't have to do official roll call.
Okay.
All right. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. I honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Councilman Lowe, can everyone please remain standing for the invocation?
Gracious God, we come together today, grateful for the opportunity to serve this community. Thank you for the trust placed in us and for the people of the city who care deeply about the future. Grant us wisdom as we deliberate, clarity as we make decisions, and humility as we listen. Help us to lead with integrity, fairness, and compassion, remembering that our actions affect real lives, families, and neighborhoods. Guide us to seek understanding across differences and to work collaboratively, and to place common good above personal interest. May our discussions be thoughtful, our intentions sincere, and our outcomes just. These and other blessings we ask in your Son Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilmember Lowe. All right, on to agenda item 4, our workshop. Development Code Rewrite Overview, Policy Direction, and Workshop Discussion, presented by Ms. Brittany.
Mayor Brittany's Doc Cowie is out today. He was feeling ill. So,
Okay.
Go ahead. So Brittany's gonna take it start to finish. She's gonna start with a brief overview of where we were, some of the discussion and comments that were received, how they were incorporated into the documents, and the next path forward.
All right, thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. So I wanted to start with a quick recap, everything that we went over the last workshop, just in case, it's been a while and some people did not attend the first one. Okay, sorry, let me get organized. Okay, so how the Bastrop Development Code is organized, our goal was to make it as simple as possible, as easy as possible for staff and developers to go in and find what they need to find and interpret it easily. So it is divided into 12 articles, beginning with zoning districts and the use table. And then we have our special districts and overlays, development standards. That's where we get specific on sidewalks, lighting, parking, all of those specific site design items. And then we also have the landscaping requirements, the tree preservation ordinance, the sign code, code enforcement, our historic preservation ordinance, and then administration and procedures. So it really simplifies the process and breaks it down all in one place. And here's our proposed crosswalk. So we are proposing an overall rezoning, but we wanted to make it as painless as possible. So our current place types are going to transition to the most similar new zoning district that we have. So for example, P3 neighborhood would become single family residential, P5 core would become commercial, etc. This was our previous place type map. And then this is our proposed new zoning map. There was one change that we had since the last meeting, and this was one of Viviana's initiatives to rezone all of our public parks to parks and open space. On the previous map, we had a lot of our parks zoned as civic space, but we get a lot of opportunities for grants, and it helps our we're trying to become a CRS city, so that helps with points for that as well. So we did change all of our public parks on the map to be zoned as parks and open space, which is correct. And then getting into our new special districts. District 1832 boundaries did get expanded based off of the last workshop's feedback up to Mesquite. And just to reiterate the main points, this is where we're going to preserve that 1/3 acre minimum lot size. And that's for both single family and mixed use zones. But we're also maintaining a contextual neighborhood setback. So any new builds or redevelopment will be able to match the current neighborhood. We have some special allowances for Chestnut Street. As far as uses, we talked about conditional uses in this area and prohibited uses that we didn't want to see in this area. And the building scale in the area, we want to keep a smaller building scale to keep it pedestrian oriented and eliminate those big box stores along Chestnut Street. And feel free to stop me whenever and ask questions, or if you have any feedback. This is a workshop, so let me know. And then the next change that we had, since we did expand District 1832 boundaries quite a bit, we are separating out the Main Street program into a separate, smaller district within that one. And this encompasses most of the commercial areas in that section. That's where the Main Street Advisory Board is looking to adopt design guidelines. So we've had a discussion with Main Street and Historic Landmark Commission just this month. They had a joint meeting to discuss, and we have another one coming up in January. So those are in the works. And then zoom in just a little bit more, we have the Downtown Historic National Register District. So this is where we're going to get even more strict. This area is what's subject to the Historic Preservation Ordinance. We keep those building form standards that were in the B3 code, and these ones also have the design guidelines.
I have a question on that one.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that we didn't include what I would call Hooverville in that historic designation? I know they are built in an entirely different way. No, go back to, in the historic. The area between Wells Fargo and Chestnut, basically.
Yeah, so this is our current National Register District, which was established back in the 70s.
Oh, okay, that's
correct?
previously been decided.
Yeah, so
Okay, that's fine.
they're looking to go into the process to expand the boundaries for any buildings that are now over 50 years or older, but they have to go through the process nationally to do that.
Okay.
So right now we're proposing the same boundaries as we currently have, but that could change.
You change it by different
Yeah.
instrument. Okay.
So one of the things, Sylvia, do you recall there was a House bill in 2019 that said that you could not require certain building materials unless it was inside of, and then there were a bunch of exceptions, right? And so the historic district had to be created prior to September 1st, 2019 in order for it to be used to require things like a certificate of appropriateness. And so the current boundaries of this historic downtown area has always fit that. And, it allowed us to eliminate the Iredell district for that requirement, but it was kept here because this one was allowed, right?
Correct.
I would be concerned about changing its boundaries, because that might make it no longer eligible to control building materials. And so that would end up being, a question for legal, because that would no longer be a historic district created prior to 2019, be created in 2025 with new boundaries, and might make it so that we could no longer regulate the things that we can today that require a Historic Landmark Commission approval.
So aesthetics cannot be regulated in the code per se, unless, you're right, there are certain conditions, and a special district is one of those conditions.
If it existed prior to 2019. Yeah.
And so I don't know if this is created and it's an amendment, so that's a conversation with legal.
It is. But I'm just pointing out that, you know, if we keep it the same, then we have no concerns over it. But if you start to change it, then you have the question, and there's probably not even a court case about it, so that you can, you know, use some sort of known set of rules, but that you just sort of be stuck in implementing something that may or may not be legal, and the court would have to determine it.
I could be wrong on this as well, but I think because this is nationally, a national registered, so just like if a historic home got a state plaque and a national plaque, it then can enforce those national things a little bit more, which yes, your local ultimately dictates that, but due to it being a national registry, I think it still opens up the opportunity for us to enforce those things like building materials.
And you can, anytime a homeowner or a business owner elects to be put into an area, but the difference is simply someone that is pulled into the area against their wishes and enforcing those rules upon them.
Yes,
And-
which is exactly what, this would be a process, like we can't do this overnight because it does exactly what you're saying is it has to be a combination effort of we have to, if we want to include the post office, we have to get everybody on board with doing so. We can't just say, hey, now you're in it. So it is a process and a cumbersome, but I think once we get through that process and we can get everybody on board with that, but yes, we could get some pushback because they may not want to be included in that. So it's not going to be a small undertaking by any means.
Now, one of the other exceptions carved out in the law is that a certified Main Street city in the areas for the Main Street areas can do certain things. That law has been made slightly more permissive on the city side for regulating building material use than it was when I first joined council, because I reread it today. And so it's probably worth revisiting the text of that law and the most recent changes to it, just to look at the things that are now allowed that weren't, you know, a year ago and so on, but yeah.
Absolutely. And since our last meeting and since our last Main Street joint meeting, because we are a Texas Main Street program, we have access to things. And the Texas Main Street program is housed under the Texas Historical Commission. And so we actually have through Texas Main Street, an architect and a design historic preservationist that we can utilize to sit down with to make sure we are up to date on the most laws and things like that. But they're also going to help us with the process of the overall design guidelines and what we can and can't implement and things like that. So.
And this is somewhat of a meta question, not specifically about this district, but at what point are we going to have legal do the review of the kind of where we are at a point in time with the code and help point out things that, you know, may or may not be legal at this point?
Legal's done a cursory review.
Okay.
So far, they haven't had any glaring issues, but after this meeting, once we get this cleaned up, it will go to legal for.
Okay, and we somehow just missed that in the B3 code. I mean, I ended up doing that, and it was...
No, they didn't miss it. There was a memo.
Oh.
It was a memo.
Got it. Well, they did it wrong. Hence the new city attorney seated at the table.
Well, there's a memo from the prior city attorney about not doing that either, too.
Did we have any more questions on the downtown overlays? I threw this map in here just so it's more obvious to show the bigger boundary, which is our main residential areas. That's our District 1832. The orange area, we're probably going to end up calling it Downtown Bastrop, since that is our Main Street program area, and that's all of their branding. So we're probably going to call that Downtown Bastrop. And then zoom in a little bit more, and you see that really historic section. And next we had the special flood hazard overlay. So the purpose of this overlay was to really reduce the amount of development we're seeing in the floodplain by restricting the amount of fill and restricting the amount of subdivision in the floodplain. And the way that we're going to do that is offering density bonuses for cluster subdivisions, which would be allowed by right. And we have riparian buffers, which are our stream buffers. We have specific requirements as far as utilities. If you are going to be filling more than 5,000 square feet in the floodplain, we would require compensatory storage, which is replacing one-to-one for any fill or excavation in the floodplain. And so we're really excited about that because we believe that's going to be crucial to development and reducing the amount of environmental impact and flooding.
The elevation is super important on that. So the last bullet on that is probably one of the most important on that slide. And so prior to this change in the code, folks can bring up fill and change the entire contour of a particular pad site. You can understand what that does to the surrounding neighborhood or the surrounding areas because they're now taking the drainage. And even though the rule is you can't flood your neighbor, we haven't had a rule to quote unquote prevent it. We tried to do it through the engineering, we tried to do it through the drainage, but this will actually say you can only elevate the foundation. So you're not having a negative impact on your neighbors and not having a negative impact to the area. You are addressing it on your property and your property only, as it should be.
Yeah, I think the other important piece is the open space preservation. We would require in subdivisions for that open space or the floodplain to be dedicated as open space through a conservation easement or something similar. And then this is just an example of what that cluster subdivision would look like, preserving the open space. So somebody would still get the same amount of lots, they would just be smaller and more green space preserved. And then we have our landscaping article. I'm also really excited about this one. So in the B3 code, we did have some landscaping requirements, but it was mostly in the public realm. So it asked that people plant trees in the public right of way, which would then mean the city was responsible for maintaining them. And the technical standards for planting really weren't conditions that trees could thrive or even survive sometimes. So what we're proposing is specific on-site landscaping requirements. So for whatever land use you are, would determine what percentage of the on-site would be required to be landscaped. We also break it down to what areas on site that landscaping is required to be. So the most important area is the frontage because that's going to, sorry. So the frontage band, we're going to require 10-foot landscaping from the front property line back. So that still benefits the public streets and sidewalks, but it's on the private property owner to maintain. And then we added parking lot landscaping requirements, which we didn't have before, buffers between unlike land uses. So if you have a commercial use next to a residential use, you would be required to plant a buffer between the two. Or if it's an industrial use next to residential, it'd be a more significant buffer.
Brittany,
Yeah.
on the preferred plant list, last year we spent a lot of time on expanding and improving the preferred plant list. Are we keeping the same preferred plant? Thank
So
you.
there's actually two different lists now. We kept that list, and that is the list that accompanies our tree preservation mitigation ordinance. And the preferred plant list takes many of those plants from it, but it's more aimed towards what we want you to plant new on the site that would survive in urban and constrained environments. That, not all of those trees on the native plant list are suitable for being planted in a parking lot. So that was the goal with the preferred plant list.
Understood, thank you.
We did also add some residential subdivision landscaping requirements, which would require one canopy tree to be per lot within 2 to 5 feet from the front property line. So again, it's on the private property owner to maintain, but it still benefits the sidewalk and the street. And then we have the tree preservation and mitigation ordinance. If you guys have any questions on this specifically, Alondra can answer. She's done a lot of work on really combining all of the recent amendments. They were in a lot of different places in the V3 code, in the technical manual, and in the code of ordinances. So she combined all of those into one ordinance. So it's very simplified, but it kept all of the requirements. She did add a critical root zone protection and credits for preserved trees under 10 inches. So if you have a tree that's 6 inches and above that you're preserving, you can get credit for those. And then in addition, we can no longer require a detailed tree survey at the time of rezonings, but we do want to require a preliminary tree survey at the time of PDDs. So that's for specifically large sites. And again, she's done a lot of research on that, so if you have any questions on what that would look like, you can ask her. But at any time the land is going to be disturbed, that's when we require a detailed tree survey. And then the sign ordinance, Alondra also did a lot of work reworking the sign ordinance based off of feedback from the Main Street Advisory Board. So she implemented all the changes they wanted to see and added a really easy chart that we can go in and see what type of sign is permitted in what area.
I have a question on that one. On the temporary signs in that part of the ordinance, where it says one temporary sign per business, how are we defining what a business is? Like, for example, in my case, we have, one LLC with two brands, working out of it, but it's all under one ownership. So I would imagine that could happen in other places too. So would that count as one, or would that count as two?
Like Old Town Piney Creek?
Correct.
But you have different COs, correct? So it's technically two
Nope.
different business.
So one CO,
Do you have a different address?
two addresses. See, it gets,
I could see how that's up to interpretation,
Right.
but we could probably go in and define that a little bit better. And
yeah, like, for
So-
example, we have, obviously there are two signs as well.
yeah,
Two permanent signs. So, to me, it would make sense to have, to allow, we don't use temporary signs,
Yep.
for the one, but
That's
I
a little
could
bit
see-
different than,
right.
that's different than the Merck on Main, which has multiple in
Multiple,
one
right.
business. That's one temporary. Yours is two different addresses. I'm assuming you have two different utility bills. You-
nope, one utility bill.
Oh, then we need to work on that
Right.
definition. Yep.
That's the same as
One-
mine also.
One time, yeah.
Okay.
I've written it down. I will look into that.
We need a definition for sure. Got it.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. And I wanted to throw this example in there because whenever you adopt a new code, you're going to ultimately have a lot of sites that come in as non-conforming since they were developed under an old code. So we added a redevelopment threshold for all of the different types of development that might happen, and identifying when and what is required to come into compliance. So, for example, if you have somebody, it's a non-conforming site, they wanted to expand their building by 50%, we could then require them to come into compliance with our new parking ordinance, which would require them to add more parking, and our landscape ordinance, which would require them to plant that frontage buffer or some trees in the parking lot. So that's an example of that and how we would handle those situations.
Not scrape the sides.
Exactly, so. And then a couple changes in the administration procedures. We mentioned this last time, but our legal team informed us that we probably should not be requiring the concept plan at the time of rezoning, so we removed that requirement. And then we added a procedure for zoning upon annexation, which really just encourages concurrent review of annexation and zoning so they come into the city, the proper zoning, rather than defaulting to rural, which is what they do now. And then another new process is the conditional use permits. So we have that whole process outlined as well. So that's going to be a process that requires notifications, public hearings, first going through Planning and Zoning Commission for recommendation, and then ultimately council for approval, and they can add conditions to that. And these conditional use permits do run with the land. And then we do have a process that's similar to a process we did have in the B3 code that we wanted to maintain, is the administrative relief, which would allow DRC, which is our development review committee, which is staff from all the different departments that review development applications, to approve adjustments up to 10% to any numeric standard in the code, excluding impervious coverage.
I have a question on this one. Is it possible to get a monthly report on those so we can see if there's an ongoing trend and maybe we need to make adjustments?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Just
think that's
because
a
if
great
it's
idea.
something that y'all are doing on a regular basis, it would be nice for us to know that maybe we need to look at the code and rewrite so it's not something that happens all the time.
Yeah, I think that's definitely doable. Really good idea.
Thank you.
And then I wanted to go over everything we talked about in the last workshop and how we've responded to all of the feedback we heard last time. And the first thing is the urban farming. And staff went back and we did a lot of research on this. And a lot of the cities surrounding us, such as Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, San Marcos, Kyle, Georgetown, Round Rock, and more, they've all adopted urban farming policies or simply allow them by right everywhere. Others do allow them by conditional use or outline specific requirements. And I think we can all agree that there are benefits to urban farming, access to fresh, affordable food. You can utilize vacant lots, opportunities for education, small businesses, adds greenery. But the concerns of noise, odor, chemicals, traffic, parking, lighting, animals, that's all real concerns. So we are suggesting to be in the middle and to permit them by conditional use permit. So it allows each application to be looked at individually, and I did outline specific requirements for that. So if somebody did want to have an urban farm, they would know their requirements right off the bat. If they wanted to comply with them, they would have to apply for a conditional use permit. And then the second change since the last meeting is the TIA requirements, the traffic impact analysis. I did take into account our recommendations from our traffic consultant for this, for those triggers that would prompt the need for a traffic impact analysis. And I did add that condition that you could require at the time of rezonings if it meets that threshold at that time.
And also, even if it doesn't meet the threshold, if council is concerned.
Yes, there's also a line in the code that does state if there are concerns for safety or whatnot, then the director or city council could require a TIA as well. I did adjust the accessory dwelling units, ADUs chapter, just to address all the comments from last time. So we are allowing 1 ADU by right in single family districts, and then 2 by right in rural and mixed use districts. In the single family districts, if you wanted to do 2, the second one would have to be conditional use. And they do still have to meet parking requirements and impervious coverage requirements, so that doesn't go away. And then I did adjust the height maximum to 24 feet, so they could do 2 stories regardless of the principal structure's height. And then we did have a comment last meeting, which is a very good comment, that the mixed-use districts are meant to allow duplexes and townhomes, but we had a minimum lot size requirement of 1/3 acre. So I did allow for smaller lots in mixed use depending on the use of the lots. So that would be determined at the time of subdivision. And you could go down in lot size, but that's only available outside the District 1832 because we know that we want to preserve all the lot sizes in that area. And this also supports our future land use map. So all the orange areas on our future land use map are designated for residential mixed density, which asks for that type of housing. So this would support that. And then we did add highway corridor setbacks. And then the scenic corridor landscape buffers is a part of the landscape ordinance, but I wanted to highlight those. That map on the far left, or the right, wherever you're sitting. It's basically all of our TxDOT roads, and it would require a 30-foot setback from the property line, which is just slightly more than typical, being that it fronts a major corridor. So that preserves space for future turn lanes, sidewalks or trails, utilities, and the scenic corridor landscape buffer would require a 20-foot frontage buffer in lieu of the 10-foot. So that's really what creates the gateway corridor and beautifies the city. It also, the increased landscape in those areas does help capture dust, filter runoff, and helps with noise and light from the freeways. And that was all I had. Did want to put up here our proposed timeline for implementation. So we have a second joint HLC and Main Street meeting on January 7th, where they are going to recommend on design guidelines for those two areas. And then if needed, but only if needed, a third joint workshop with you all on January 29th. And then Planning and Zoning Commission for recommendation on February 26th with City Council on March 24th, and then second reading April 14th. And with that, if you guys have any questions, let me know.
Commissioner Parsons has a question.
I just have one question. Why are we limiting parking on Chestnut?
Why are we limiting it?
Why would we want retail options to go down Chestnut, similar to, Burnley or Fredericksburg? It's not really increase shopping opportunities and possibly attracting.
Can you talk into the
more
mic,
retail.
please?
Pardon?
Can you talk into the mic,
Can you
please?
say everything again? Yes, what was the question?
Yes, please.
Hi. My question is, why are we not, why are we limiting parking on Chestnut? As I was saying, it would seem to me that we would want to increase retail traffic in the downtown area, similar to some of the other cities like Burnley or Fredericksburg, where you have more retail options, which would attract more people to the city and more people in the restaurants and et cetera.
So you're correct. Everything along Chestnut is pretty much zoned for commercial, so that's going to result in retail eventually, but we're not limiting parking on Chestnut, but we are suggesting that we require parking on the side or in the rear of the buildings, and that's because we see Chestnut as kind of an extension of the downtown Main Street, and we do want to improve the walkability of the area a little bit and make it more pedestrian friendly. So when you do have more landscaping in the front and less big parking islands in the front, it encourages more walkability. So
That's in new things. We're not asking existing commercial to retrofit. We're not asking anything. But if you have a blank lot, for example, on Chestnut that you want to redevelop, we do want the building to be closer, just the nice landscaping in the front, similar to what we have in the downtown area. But we have too many businesses on Chestnut right now that have parking in the front, and to just automatically require the change as part of a code change is, number one, darn near impossible. And number two, if you make them so stringently non-conforming, they're gonna have trouble getting loans, they're gonna have trouble selling and those kinds of things. So we tried to avoid as much as possible making the knothole super small, because it doesn't need to be. This is for new things coming forward.
Thank you.
How much control will we have over there anyway, being that this belongs to TxDOT?
We do.
Okay.
It's on the.
It's on our side of it.
Outside of
Okay.
things, correct.
All right.
But again, the intent of any code is orderly development. It is not to make a knothole so small that it is painful for anybody who wants to do anything. And most of our businesses on Chestnut are small, and they are struggling businesses, especially after COVID. But our prior B3 really restricted the uses that we wanted to see on Chestnut. The automotive uses would not have been allowed on Chestnut, which, if COVID showed us anything, it was that you need a diversified economy to be able to survive as a city. And so we're good with the uses. There are some conditionals that you need to do, because obviously we don't want you welding with sparks and everything flying right next to the fertilizer that, you know, the gentleman is selling across the street. So, you know, there are some uses and protections, but for example, if the things on the other side of the feed store get developed and that's being sold as a block, yeah, we want to encourage the parking to be at the rear where possible, but it is virtually impossible for us to get, 70% of the businesses that are here today to swap their parking to some other configuration.
I was primarily thinking parallel parking, not necessarily a parking lot, but similar to what we have on Main Street already. That's kind of what I was thinking, not necessarily a business with a big parking space.
Oh, to create parallel parking on Chestnut? Ouch.
That would require widening it probably.
You couldn't do away with the middle lane?
So more than 40,000 cars travel down Chestnut every day. That's a difficult ask. That was going to be one of the B3 changes, that this corridor was, again, restricting the uses, make it more walkable, and change that parking configuration. That's going to require substantial infrastructure improvement to widen the street and to move that drainage out of the way.
Okay.
I think just also as a visual, because Chestnut, and 100%, if people are grandfathered, and I spoke with Brittany about this when this first came out, and she did explain the grandfathering, but then she gave me a reference of the Lost Pines Art Building and how cool that is with it closer to the sidewalk. And for new development, to have more of that would aesthetically also be much more appealing for people to transition from Main to come down Chestnut. So then it made a lot of sense to me.
I've got some parking questions. First of all over the place, it seems like we've defined a parking space as 10 by 20. And I remember when we did that, we were talking about single family housing, and we were eyeballing it, from the dais. So I did a quick Google search, and almost all of the requirements in Texas are 9 by 18.
9 by 18.
So would everybody be okay with switching that, since we're redoing the code now?
On the commercial end,
In general.
No, on the commercial end, I would absolutely tell you to keep it in, to do 9 by 18, absolutely appropriate. On the residential end, you run into other things that keep you from, one of the main reasons we did it was so that those trucks wouldn't overlap onto the sidewalk. I think for residential, completely appropriate. You can even do 9 by 20. That's okay on the residential. It's that length that keeps them from bumping into that overhang.
Yeah, I just didn't want this to be applied to a commercial development where you've got a big parking lot and you're going to waste a lot of space creating a bunch of 10-foot.
No, so we can go 9 by 18, but 2, in the code, we're really encouraging shared parking wherever necessary, wherever possible, because we don't need seas of parking lot. That's a heat effect and a whole other stuff with runoff.
Sure.
So yes, if you're next to a use that they're primarily 7 to midnight and you're 8 to 5, then yes, absolutely, let's count those parking spaces as a double for the business.
Okay. And I talked to one of our commercial developers, and because I don't know these numbers, I don't know what's reasonable. And he suggested that we add a category for like a furniture store. So, which is going to be a big square footage store, but not attract a lot of customers. And to go to 1 to 400 on that one for every 400 square feet. And if anybody's got a problem with that, I'm okay. But It seemed,
No,
it seemed like a reasonable thing. And I don't know, besides furniture stores, what other stores would, kind of retail would fit into that category, but
So.
that seemed reasonable to me.
Not taking any away from the furniture store because there's only a certain amount of people that can actually be in the store with all the furniture placed.
Right.
But take into account a Costco or take into account a Sam's where you can absolutely smash that many people in
Yeah.
the space. So we can look at what standards are for things like furniture stores.
Right.
Or for those businesses, like, I don't know, you call them lights out businesses. I don't even know what that means, but like technology places where it's a giant box, but they don't have any employee
Right.
type thing. So we can,
Yeah, like, I don't know, mattress stores might be one like that. I mean, I guess they would be included in furniture, hopefully, but I'm trying to think of anything else that, where you would have a disparity between your typical traffic, to square footage,
I think what comes to mind is I want to go check out South Park Meadows because they have a giant rooms to go store there.
Uh-huh.
And it
It's
feels like
always
they don't-
empty.
Yeah, it feels like they don't have a lot of parking spaces.
I think my one fear with furniture is my immediate thought was IKEA. And that's like, I know it's not the norm, but like if we just vaguely say furniture store,
But those are enormous, enormous locations. So actually, they probably do have a lesser parking spaces to square footage ratio than like a Costco would, or a Walmart or
I don't
something
think
like
so.
that.
The one in San Antonio, theirs is just about as big as Costco and Sam's. There's like IKEA, Costco, Sam's right there at 35 and 1604, and they all have really, really big parking lots.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to
Actually,
have,
the parking ratio for an IKEA store, according to Google, is typically 3.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet.
So that,
Yeah,
that's
your
almost 1 to
1 per
250, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
But we'll research that.
Okay. And a lot of that's determined by the market. Like, for example, IKEA is going to require that of their landlord or their, developer. So, yeah, in my opinion, what our job is to do is to set minimums for the, for the businesses themselves. They're going to regulate themselves in a way because they don't want to be without parking places. That's, going to determine how much business they get. So, our job, in my opinion, is to set minimums that keep, that keep things from getting out of hand one way or the other, I guess.
Sure, just to give you an idea, the Round Rock IKEA has 1,200 spaces for a 250,000 square foot facility. So that's approximately 4.76 spaces per 1,000 square feet. So we can certainly look at that. Yes, our old code had parking maximums.
Right.
And I know why they did that. They did that because parking creates runoff. And then you're dealing with a drainage situation that you have to exacerbate, but they're having to detain on site, and so you end up with, giant holes in the ground, which is why it's really, really, really critical the islands are there because that creates a break and impervious cover. But two, that we really look at the idea of shared parking. I mean, it's not so much constrained so that the parking is spilling out into the street or spilling out onto the public streets, but again, how do those things interact with one another so we don't have giant, parking lots?
Yeah, and in the spirit of the shared parking places, which I completely agree with, we have this new trend with restaurants where everything is to go, and they like to have these dedicated to go parking spots. How do we count those? Because that should be shared, but it's really not. They're putting up a sign saying you can't park here if you're somebody else.
It's a parking spot. I mean,
So-
we're not gonna regulate that. That's a parking spot.
But, I mean, should they get extra credit because it's a quicker turnaround, or should they get less credit because they're not sharing?
No,
Or just
it's
leave it alone?
It's a spot.
Okay.
It's a spot.
You
I mean,
can
you know-
monitor it.
Yeah. And really the trend in retail, believe it or not, at post-COVID, the trend in retail is smaller footprints. You know, we had a super salad and a Dutch Brothers coffee and a blank, 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 all wanting to go right in front of the Tractor Supply. And they're micro sites, right? 800 square feet or so. And the reason that site didn't work, number one, there's a land use issue, but two, it would create what we now all affectionately refer to as the Chick-fil-A effect, right? The backup traffic on 71. And so we couldn't get that circulation going. So they're finding an alternate site. But the trend is to actually go smaller because of that to-go phenomenon or the DoorDash phenomenon.
Just a question, Brittany, I forgot to ask you at the last meeting. Is hospital, medical, is that under PI for the zoning, public institutional, or?
It should be. So I have medical, dental, and labs permitted in mixed-use commercial, but not in the public institution. So the public institutional is more of the city-owned, but
Schools.
The other
Oh,
would be
here.
private, okay.
Oh, yeah, so I do have a hospital category too.
Okay.
That is permitted in PI.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yes.
I have a question, and this is maybe just because I'm new. I know that we're taking out the concept plan, and I know that's for legal reasons. What recommendations do you have for planning and zoning to ensure when we have somebody up for zoning changes that we can almost hold their feet to the fire? Because who's to say that they don't come and say, yeah, I want to build, 3 apartments. And we say, cool, sounds great in that area. And then they're like, yeah, just kidding. Now that it's rezoned, I'd like to build an industrial park and all of these things because it's permitted now in their rezoning. I just wanted to see clarification on guidelines there.
You really don't have control over that. So when you are approving a rezoning, you have to look at all of the uses that would be permitted in that zone and know that that's a possibility.
You get more of that discussion in a PDD, because the PDD is a flexible zoning where they have to tell you up front what they want to build. But if they're zoning, to some commercial zoning standard, then they can do everything contained within that every time.
Yeah, I think we've gotten really lucky though, because you guys are doing a great job at trying to get everybody kind of on the PDD path, just because it gives clarity to everyone else. So thank you for that.
So I have some sign questions. First one is the word mural or murals is not anywhere in our development code, and I think we should at least put some requirement for murals to go through whatever we're legally allowed to require for those.
So I think when Alondra can answer this question, but I believe it was not considered like a sign, which is why it's not in the sign ordinance, but.
No, it's not
we
anywhere in
could
the development
definitely-
code, yeah.
Yeah, I know, we don't have it anywhere in the code, but we could. So what were you thinking in terms of murals? Would you permit them everywhere or certain areas?
I'm not so specific, I'm not concerned about the location, I'm concerned about what in a review, and you have to be careful on, content review, but, family friendly, no curse words, I don't know, just, whatever the line is of things that you're allowed to do as a government that, that we say that we're going to do that. Some approval.
So are you thinking of like, they would have to apply for a permit and somebody at the city would review it?
Yes.
Or we just have specific rules?
No, I would do a permit and a review for a mural.
Can I ask Stan a question on that? Because that was a TML about a town that tried to restrict, and it was violated the First Amendment right.
Yeah.
So then it got real sticky.
No, exactly.
on-
You have to
yeah.
be very careful with content.
Right.
Restrictions. But, at the same time, there's, you can't put pornography on it, right? So, there are certain limits of things that you can exclude, and I just want us to make sure we're excluding those.
So the super simple TML test
Yeah.
was if it's advertising a business, a product, et cetera, it's a sign, and you regulate it as a sign.
Right.
If it's purely art, then the city can put a super simple guideline on the logo, the text, but it's not a very big list when it's considered art.
It is not a very big list, but if we have no list, then there's no list.
We can add it.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, there is such a thing as too many signs. And by that I mean, if you actually intentionally go and search for Google images of things and you find a business that has, 53 signs in front of, literally there is so much, such a thing as too many signs. The thing that I'm thinking about is like you've got the churches that we have in town. They tend to have very large lots, maybe even multi-acres sitting on Main Street. And we're limiting to one temporary sign, right, for something that's as big as that and it has as many varied uses as that. And many points of entry too, from multiple different sides across something that might be a 4-acre campus. And so, one temporary sign that's, 8 square feet, between 2 T-posts just seems like too little. And when we instituted the B3 code requirements to pay for a sign permit and then and limited those signs, one of our churches had to pull all those signs up. So this is the, was it Celebrate Recovery, or anyway, it was a, Alcoholics Anonymous type program, and they had to pull all their signs up and they saw their participation drop by 1/3. Well, that's tragic, right? And so for us to have rules that disallow a church to put up, one more, 8 square foot sign on something that's 4 acres in size, it just, it feels like it's excessive regulation. So, some of the threads inside of what I'm saying include like a number of signs per unit area that you could possibly do for temporary signs. I mean, larger lots should be able to put up more.
Yeah, maybe it's a per foot of street frontage or something like that.
Yeah, but anyway, just something in that space to, and really, be thinking, it's like, how do I allow, this, things that are 4 acres in size in the downtown area, how do we allow them to put up, what might be 6 temporary signs spread throughout their campus, and instead of just one for the whole
And all
thing.
of those signs had public right-of-way visual?
Um,
Because that's what we're regulating, what you do inside your property line and.
Yeah, no, there were signs to the public, not signs. I wasn't talking about like, this way to the, the office space.
Yeah, not the wayfinding signs, but, so the 6 signs that they had were all on the public right-of-way
Yeah,
facing.
and they weren't in one spot. They were, they could be spread out. And so anyway, I'm contemplating that the one sign requirement for all locations feels excessively, like too small.
So, sorry, does this pertain only to temporary signs? Or are we,
Well, if you've got multiple entries, I think, in terms of permanent signs, you're probably going to want to allow permanent signs at multiple entry points in a large campus,
Okay.
right? So there's that.
Yeah, so
But
the
I am
permanent-
primarily talking about temporary signs. That's the one that I've had the complaints
okay.
over.
Yeah, so the permanent signs, we do have them 1 per frontage. So,
Okay,
yes, if you are a property that does have multiple frontages, you do have
perfect.
that allowance. I can look into the possibility of doing like per square footage.
I mean, it's hard because there is a square footage per acre, right?
Well, maybe it's linear footage of
Yeah.
of right of way, like 1 per 100 per 100 linear feet, maybe.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
That allows the smaller organizations to be able to have those signs. That square footage would kind of take them out of the picture.
What also gets funny is like, how do you convert 4 acres into square feet? It's not hard to do mathematically, but no one thinks of
Right.
it in terms of,
But they can go out there with
You know.
tape.
The conversion wouldn't be square feet, the conversion would be how many linear feet do you have?
agreed,
based
and that's what
on-
Kevin proposed, and we all
Right,
like that, yeah.
Well, and so the second question was, sorry, the 6 signs, are we thinking like they're gonna be put all on that same property, or were they spread out through the city?
No, they were all on the same
property.
property.
Okay.
And, maybe it's, 2 Celebrate Recovery signs at 2 entrances or, something like that.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Can I have the address?
It's the Methodist Church on Main. Got that large campus, with,
They got most of a full block.
yeah.
Oh, we were just there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so they
Catholic
have,
Church, too.
they have frontage off
Yeah,
a
Catholic
farm,
Church as well.
and they have frontage off of Main. And so it looks like they are about 330 feet both on Main and about 200 feet on Farm.
And they have beach too, don't they?
Their
Yes.
back parking lot is beach.
Yeah. Yes.
And so they wanted one on Farm, one on Main, and one on Beach.
I mean, not necessarily for all of it, but yeah, maybe 6 is too many, but maybe it's not per 100 feet, maybe it's per 200 feet, but it's more than one on the whole property is, kind of the basic discussion, and then what is a reasonable upper limit that doesn't clutter the place with signs, but allows them to advertise the kinds of things that a church wants to advertise.
And maybe we try a couple of different ways and then have some representative properties and max it out on those properties. And, visually, not physically, but, you can do that on a map and say, okay, does that make sense in this type of and basically you're talking about going from, I guess, a church on the big side, either the Catholic Church or the Methodist Church. Those are the 2 biggest frontage properties, and maybe square footage, but that doesn't matter. It's frontage we're talking about. And then scale it down to, like the, one of the skinny stores in the middle of a block, and see what that, and obviously 1 would be your minimum. So.
Makes sense.
I had a question about the ADUs. Where would these people park?
So parking is going to be a requirement no matter what. So if somebody is going to be proposing an ADU, they have to figure out their parking situation, whether it's 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, will require whatever amount of parking per bedroom. So that's for them to figure out whether they do parking in the front, the side, backyard, but it is going to be required. And so that's going to be checked at the time of building permit that they do have those parking spaces.
So they put the driveway through on the side lot line up to the lot line? Is there a footage requirement?
What do you mean?
There's
Well, if your
driveways.
house is in the middle and you've got a 10-foot lot line, you make that part your driveway to get in back and put the parking for the ADU in the backyard, or do you make the driveway and park on that driveway?
It just depends on the house configuration. The most that we have are driveway spacing requirements. So 2 driveways can't, butt up right up against each other. But most of what's in the downtown area has detached parking, so they have the ability to do super deep parking. I would venture to say in your neighborhood, it's going to be a little bit harder to get an ADU there. Plus, you have HOA restrictions in your neighborhood on
I hope
ADUs.
so. They're pretty silent.
Yeah, on ADUs. Mhm. So in your neighborhood, he lives in Riverside Grove. So in Riverside Grove, the standard is the 2 parking spaces in the garage and 2 parking spaces on the outside the garage. So it's essentially
On the drive, you get 4, basically.
Yeah, so it's essentially 4 per house. Most of the houses in there are 3 and 4 bedrooms. So they're already maxed out on parking. So if you're gonna add an ADU, a one-bedroom ADU over, you know, whatever in the backyard, you've got to figure out where you're gonna park it. And we allow parking in the front layer now, but you're gonna have to build a parking spot. And whether or not that's possible just depends
Well,
on your,
Yeah, if you drive around like on a Saturday or Sunday morning about 6:37, they're using the sidewalks, fire hydrants, space for parking.
and that's what we're trying to prevent, that kind of parking cluster that makes neighborhood living difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, there was, you know, a tiny bit, a small amount of pushback on both the size of the parking place, 10 by 20, but also requiring one per bedroom, because we made that change from the dais to increase it to one per bedroom. But when you're looking at the neighborhoods that we're talking about, one per bedroom is not even enough, because they already have greater than one per bedroom on average in the neighborhoods that we walk through and say that they don't have enough parking in them, right? But yeah, it's a mess now. And so it's just, you know, it's one of those things where, goodness, the number that was put there for our consideration felt like it wasn't enough. Let's at least do this. I wouldn't want to build anything smaller. Yeah.
It's the same way.
Like I said, you do about 7 o'clock on Sunday, when most people are home,
Mhm.
and you'll see how people are parking.
The difficult part for me to understand, and I've stopped trying to figure out what was intended in the B3, was we articulated those houses closer. If you go into the Grove and you go into those flat facade house, there's not even an articulation in the house. They've got a single car parking stall. Houses are, you know, 1,100 square feet. The car stall is very short. It's already blocking the sidewalk to begin with. It's laid out onto, they are parking on the sidewalk, they are parking on the front lawn. So the best intention to make a neighborhood walkable is not walkable, because you have the vehicles blocking the sidewalks. And so to Mayor Pro Tem Kirkland's point, when we talked about the number of parking spaces, no, nobody wants to see a sea of parking lots either. So the best, you know, meet in the middle was to make the parking stall larger so that you don't have those overhangs onto the sidewalk, so that folks don't have to try to get around the sidewalk and onto the road as they're, you know, trying to walk through the neighborhood.
Well, we do have some handicapped people in wheelchairs who go to the mailbox, and the cars are not, they can't get through, and they're out the street.
Not even that point, but a lot of streets, when I go around on all the different subdivisions around, like Patrice, where you live, Pecan Park, it's real. I don't even know how fire trucks can get down the street with all the cars parked on the street.
My car can barely go down
Yeah,
the street.
yeah. Me too. Like, you go to certain places in town, it's like cars have to pull over just to let one car go. So yeah.
Well, and when you go around the corner and you've got a big truck and a trailer and cars blocking the sidewalk, blocking both sides of the street, and you're coming around that corner and there are all these kids, it's like, okay, I wonder how long it's gonna be for somebody to smush.
Any other questions or comments? I really, really want to congratulate the staff. We maybe had, I don't know, maybe 2 whiteboard sessions. I had maybe 2 whiteboard sessions. We laid it out, and they ran with it. They really ran with it. They were empowered to do what they needed to do. They talked to many of you to work your changes into the code. So I really want to congratulate the development staff. I really want to congratulate the planning staff, because even our attorney said, what consultant did you have do this? And I said, none. We're not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars anymore on consultants. That's how we can afford to do what we're doing. We're keeping it in-house, because you know what the consultants do? They pick up the phone and call us anyway. And we're doing the work.
And now maybe we'll know the code after it gets passed.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, utilize the people you have and train those, and that's how we get over.
The one thing I super appreciate, first of all, is that last date on April 14th, when that gets to fruition, we can have a funeral for the B3 codes, and we'll have a coffin with B3 code written on it. We're going to close it. But also, just the common sense that's gone into this Bastrop Development Code with the language. Because still, warrants and things like that, place types, that just drives me crazy because people have no clue unless you're in it. And if you're in it all the day, then okay, then it starts to make sense because you're immersed in it. But the public doesn't understand any of that. So just for the benefit of our citizens, this is so much more helpful.
I want her to go back to this particular segment. I want her to go back to that. We're gonna have to work with the developer to pull those trees up. They will not survive there. They're not in tree wells, and they're gonna rip the street up as they start to grow. That, pushing those things into the public realm, the intent was to create beautiful street corridors. I get that, but we can do that with the onus on the private homeowner to do that. We're gonna help the developer move these to their second phase because that's just not a reasonable
Right.
thing to do.
And
When
how
you-
many, sorry.
When you go to the front side of this very same apartment complex and you see the rocks that are there that are ostensibly trying to prevent cars from ending up into those apartments, you see the property owners who are renting those apartments who park there to unload their groceries because the parking is way over here. And there isn't enough parking in those apartments because guess what? We didn't have parking minimums. And so it is a difficult situation to try to work ourselves out of and not replicate this kind of thing. I was listening to a financial podcast the other day on, as we talk about housing and we talk about affordability, how a particular city relieved their apartment building codes and then also put in rent controls. Those cities dropped apartment permitting by 40–50%. So guess what? The very housing crisis they were trying to solve, they created or exacerbated. And so we've got some good things in the code. We need to tweak it. Parking is absolutely one of them. If there's anything I've heard from you guys more than anything is parking. So I want to really thank the staff. I think they did an excellent job. Are you okay with the urban farm?
Yes.
Good. I heard that you guys had a meet in the middle and you had a lot of good conversation. So it's wonderful. The ADU, the 2-story maximum, that was a big question before. Everybody okay with that?
That allows for a garage apartment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the intention there. And, yeah,
And
so-
neighbor privacy, is that the concern?
From the 2-story, if you're next to a 1-story.
Yeah.
No, we didn't take that into account.
There is a little bit of taking that into consideration with setbacks. So if you have a second story, it's a larger setback.
But if they have a garage and they're building it over the garage, and the garage is already 5 feet from the property line. Yeah, we can't make you not put a window there.
Well, you know, I mean, I don't know if there's the stuff that you put over the window, the Claire, whatever that is, where it's almost like frosted or something, or I don't know if that's can be regulated, but you know, I mean, you probably want to look out your window.
From a privacy perspective, if we want to say if you're within certain feet of the property line, then no penetrations there, meaning no windows there. But yeah, again, we're going to start telling people how to design their stuff, and that gets real, I guess, real sticky. Yeah, I guess
They're just going to have to keep their clothes on, Barry.
No wild parties, huh?
Anybody have any other questions? I see Carrie's starting to straighten up, so.
I got my list, yeah. Could we please go to page 28 of the code, not the packet, the code for primary residential use? I want to ask about short-term rentals. In the use chart, we've got conditional under RR and SF. And we currently have a short-term rental registration process only, but we're not regulating them, right? So does this mean the folks in these districts will come to us for like regulation to see if we will approve them doing that use?
I think that's something I might have overlooked. It probably needs to be changed to just permitted.
Oh, to just
'Cause we didn't
permitted?
intend
Yeah,
to-
because
I
it's
did
two
not
different
intend that.
business, right? Registration and regulation?
Yeah,
We
we,
don't have the ability.
Okay,
I mean,
cool.
I don't want the AG in.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah.
And that's why
tender
we're doing,
territory.
again, remember, the intent for the registration process was really one of life, health, and safety. We just
Right.
need to know that you're here to
Yeah.
show you how to evacuate.
Okay. I'm going to go on that same page down at the bottom. Recreational vehicles, RVs, are not permitted anywhere in the city limits, is what I'm seeing.
As a primary.
as a
Oh,
primary.
that's primary, okay,
Yes.
okay, cool. Let's go to the next page. This is the one, the very top, so this is we are under accessory and incidental uses now. And the one I'm asking about is accessory building, non-residential. So this would be like a shed or storage, right? Or no?
Any
different-
accessory building to a commercial use. So if it's a commercial business and they're putting like a little storage building.
Is this commercial?
So that's what the non-residential means. Accessory building to a non-residential.
Oh, because we have two different definitions in this document.
Okay.
One is on page like 69, where it talks about accessory structure, non-residential, which is more like shed, right?
Right, yes.
And then we have page 139, there's accessory building structure. But actually, it kind of looks like it's referring to a residential neighborhood too.
Right, I could change the wording for that one in the use chart just to make sure it says an accessory building to a commercial use.
That would be more clear, yeah, because right now it's permitted in mixed use and then not permitted at all. And that would be appropriate for commercial, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Accessory building use. Okay, great. Going down, let's see. And then for that same page, 29, under utility service and other, what is a utility shop and storage? Because I see those are like not permitted in SF and conditional for mixed use. Is that like a more commercial situation?
I don't have a definition of that, but it is referring to a more commercial use.
Public buildings, because all those others in that chart are pretty like commercial things.
Yes, I could define that as well. This chart, I took it from the previous code before B3 code, so I took a lot of the uses from that chart, but I can go back and make sure we define these uses that are a little bit vague.
So we, just so that everybody knows, we are a little bit limited on where utilities, on regulating where utilities can go. The Public Utility Commission has separate rules on those kinds of things, so I may not want an electrical substation somewhere, but I may not also have a choice.
Okay, I didn't even know what a utility shop was. That means like utilities.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm talking about the electrical substation and
Okay.
wires.
I think that's pretty good. Oh, on page 42 on the overlays. I was wondering if we need to look at the definition, that first one on the top of page 42. The purpose, since we expanded the district map-wise, do we need to modify the purpose a little bit? Because the purposes seems to be when it was a little bit smaller in. Do you want me to read it?
So I think
Oh,
changing the
yes.
word
What do you
for
think?
the downtown core, but preserving and strengthening Bastrop's, I don't know, traditional footprint, I don't know, but downtown core, those two words should be removed.
Okay.
Or a little more flexible?
Yeah.
I think that's it for me. Thank you. Looks great.
Do we have any other commissioners or council members that have any other things they want to talk about?
No, I just want to reiterate many thanks to staff for all the hard work you've done to come up with this amazing document that's going to make so much sense and be so much better for our city. So thank you all.
You're going to open citizen comment?
Yes, that's why I was asking, so I can get to citizen comments. We haven't received any, correct? No. All right. So we don't have any citizens. Well, we need them to sign up and bring a paper up. I know that's pretty routine. Thank you. All right, we have Pablo Serna. He wishes to speak on the setbacks. Please introduce yourself and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Pablo Serna, 1104 Hill Street. It's a question that I guess is another comment period, but I wanted to ask the planner, and I was reading through as much as I could. If in the District 1832, all existing P3 lots will be rezoned SF1. If my reading is right, that they will be, and then they will not be allowed to be rezoned, which I think is a good thing. But SF1 is the really large lot. There are very many lots in the District 1832 that are much smaller, and putting a 30-foot setback in their rear yard would severely limit what they could do. The side yard setbacks are kind of pretty large as well. If you have a large lot, those are reasonable setbacks. If you have a smaller lot, those are going to probably make some of your structures non-conforming, particularly garages, which in the older districts you have a detached garage in the backyard. Many of those structures, as I've seen them on the maps, are within 5 feet of the property line or more, are right around there. They're really close to the edge. And if someone wanted to put a ADU on their detached garage in their backyard, and they have a reasonable lot, maybe 4,000, 5,000, something less than a third of an acre, which is, I think, 14,000 square feet, they're not going to be able to do that. So it'll be non-conforming, and I think that's a little limiting. I was suggesting, I think I sent an email out, that you do a lot for lot. Now that you've created 3 new lots, single-family, I guess, zones or uses, SF1 for the larger lots, SF2 for the medium-sized lots, and SF3 for the smaller lots, all within the P3 District 1832. So that's more of a like-for-like crosswalk than just taking a small lot and giving them the large lot standard. So if you can discuss that, that'd be great.
Thank you, Pablo. Appreciate your input. All right,
We can respond with information directly to the board and the council.
Come again?
We
can respond. I know.
We can respond to you.
Right, that's,
with information.
yes.
Brittany?
Yeah, so we did take into account setbacks in existing neighborhoods and accessory structure setbacks. So if you're in an existing neighborhood, that's why we have the contextual neighborhood setback, which allows you to match your neighbors in the front yard. And then as far as accessory structures, there's different rules for setbacks for them, and they are allowed to be within 5 feet of the rear and the side property lines. So if you do have a detached garage, then you wouldn't have to have that 30-foot rear setback. You can be within 5 feet of the property lines.
All right, thank you, Brittany. All right, do we have any other citizen comments?
No, but I have a question for clarification. One of his other concerns was that everything is going to be moved to SF1. That would be revisited if ownership changed, right? Is that, or am I misremembering? I just remember everything was going to be automatically SF1, and then because some of them might not qualify for based on size, but that would be when they come in for something, right? Is when we would look at rezoning to the correct.
Well, so he's right, they're gonna come into SF1 and that's the larger lots, but that's what we said we wanted in that particular district. We wanted 3rd acre lots. And so if you're not on a 3rd acre lot right now, you're already non-conforming. And we're not gonna hold that non-conforming against you. So in the old code and other codes before this, if you were non-conforming, you cannot expand a non-conforming use. It doesn't allow you to do that. So I think 2 years ago, we put in the contextual stuff. If it looks like it's around you and you look like the neighborhood, you can continue to do what everybody else in the neighborhood is doing, even if they're on a 1/3 of a lot and you're, 1/3 of an acre lot and you're not. Okay. I had the example of the area behind the high school where their carport extended beyond the front setback, and it was a person who had a disabled parent and a special needs child. They wanted to enclose that in to create a bedroom, and we as a city said no, because the rule was you can't expand a non-conforming use because it was already there. And so this contextual removes that. If you take the sight line, everybody was encroaching into that front setback because that's how those houses were built. They didn't have garages per se, they had carports, etc. So I think we addressed that a couple of years ago.
No worries. I just wanted to make sure we answered both questions for him.
All right. So if we don't have any more citizen comments, and we don't have anything else.
May I ask one more question, please?
Sure.
Okay. Have we looked at how many non-conforming properties we're going to have immediately upon adoption? Like what percentage will be non-conforming?
It's going to be the same percentage that became non-conforming under the B3. We'll go back and look at that.
No, shouldn't it be lower? I mean, we were like 80% with the B3 code. I mean, nearly everything was non-conforming.
Can we look at that?
And a really important point.
We'll go back and look. We'll go back and get that number.
On that, even though, as Sylvia said, before you couldn't do anything, now you can. But the other thing when it was non-conforming was if you wanted to get a loan or something. I remember Gary Schiff up on the Lakeside Hospital building. I mean, he was extremely hurt by what happened because he was non-conforming. So you go to a financial institution, they're like, there's no way, you don't even qualify to get. So I'm glad that we, as Heather brought up about the non-conforming, they won't be punished like they were in the past for the B3 codes.
All right, thank y'all. Does anyone else have any other statements or comments they would like to bring forth?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Cool.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank y'all for this wonderful workshop. We have a few things to bring back, our staff does, so we will see y'all on the 7th. January 7th, right? Correct? Isn't that what you?
January 7th is our joint HLC.
Joint, oh, no, sorry. The 29th, sorry. I have these dates written down. The 29th. I'm sorry. January 29th. Thank y'all.